Hello and welcome to the Tragically Hip and National Celebration post-show on CBC Music. I'm Rich Turfry, host of Drive on CBC Radio 2, coming to you live from CBC Toronto's Studio 430, where we're catching our breath after wrapping up the big national live broadcast from Kingston, Ontario. What a show. The Tragically Hip brought down the house at the Rogers K-Rock Centre in the heart of their hometown, making an emotional final stop on their Man Machine Poem tour. In just a moment, you'll hear the reactions of our three special guests here in the studio who have been watching and listening to the concert along with you. Before we hear from them, here's what we'd like to know. What was your favorite moment of the night? What will you remember most in the hours and days to come? Share your reactions with us on Twitter using the hashtag CBCTheHip, or comment on the live feed on the CBC Music Facebook page. It's facebook.com/CBC Music. Here to share their favorite moments from tonight's unforgettable concert, we have Toronto-based Juno Award-winning producer Gavin Brown, who produced the Hip's 2012 album. Now for Plan A. Gavin, how you doing?
Hi, Rich. How you doing?
We have originally from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Pia Chattopadhyay, host of CBC Radio 1's Out in the Open. Pia, it's nice to see you.
Hi.
And all the way from Vancouver, BC, Juno Award-winning singer-songwriter Dan Mangan. Welcome all. I don't know about you guys, but I feel weird.
Yeah, my heart is beating as I feel a little bit tingly.
My eyes are a little smoky, steamy.
Yeah, there's a lot of dust in this room.
I don't know how I feel.
Yeah.
I'm not sure either. Exactly. We just watched an incredibly powerful, emotional show from one of the country's all-time great musical acts. Gavin, I want to start with you. This was the last stop on the Man Machine Poem tour. The band has not said at any point that this is the last show, but we all heard the news a few months ago about the state of Gord's health, so we don't know exactly what to expect going forward.
You never know with Gord,
here.
don't you?
You never know. You never know. You made it out to a few...
Yeah, I went to the Toronto shows.
Yeah.
And it was weird is a good word to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a celebration of his life and the work of the band and some good friends of mine and yours and the country's.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's a time for mourning and it's a time for reflection and looking into mortality.
Any thoughts on how this show looked and sounded different from the ones you saw earlier on the
I've seen the Hip for 20 years, and it was a Hip show. It was, it was a special Hip show, obviously. They played tons of great songs. These are songs that transcend the songs even. They become relationships that we all have. There's these pinnacle moments in our lives where each of these songs, I remember that, I remember this, texted my wife, lyrics from Ahead by a Century. It's really hard.
It's hard. Yeah. I saw the first Toronto show on the Wednesday, and there were a few deeper cuts. Dan, you and I were speaking a moment ago. It was pretty much nothing but the hits tonight.
It was all bangers tonight. I mean, and even the slow ones were the fan favorite slow ones. It was all hits. I was at the show on Sunday in Toronto, and they skipped all of Fully Completely. I was as a fan, I was like, oh man, but as a Canadian and as an adorer of the band, I was fine with it. It's sort of like, you do your thing, play what you want.
Exactly.
But tonight they didn't hold anything back.
Pia, Gord's dynamic stage persona is legendary, and it's something we've talked about a lot over the last few weeks. So what do you think about his performance and the band's performance on stage tonight? What'd you take away?
I think, I don't want to be dour about this, but this is a 52-year-old man who is dying of cancer. And it doesn't matter if you're in the fittest of health. Him and the guys played for nearly 3 hours. The fittest of people can't do that well. So for me, I couldn't... forget the absence. When I've seen the Hip play before, it's Gord's, strutting the stage and all of that. And I missed that tonight. For obvious reasons, it wasn't there. But I missed that. It felt somewhat different for me for that.
He was still every bit
he's amazing.
The performer, the actor, the silly goose, though, the whole thing, right? I mean...
Yeah, I think that's kind of my favorite thing is what a weirdo he is. And he's so beautiful and intelligent and funny and thoughtful. And caring. I mean, I don't know him well personally, but I have many friends who have been longtime friends with him. Gavin's known him forever, and I just, every story about the man is that he would do the right thing. He would always choose the high road, and he would always kind of, I don't know, he was an ambassador for so many amazing things in this country.
And his face says it all.
Yeah.
You know, whether he covers the geography of the stage, that's one thing. But, you know, his little expressions, the nuance. He's always been into nuance. When he was working on lyrics on the record I made with him, 37 drafts through, it's all about the nuance. You know, we talked about, all the first person, second person, all the different adjectives, whatever. He was a man of detail. And, when, obviously he's quite ill. And so all those little details that he gave, he was working to give us those details and the nuance. Yeah.
I was thinking these last few days about what we like so much about watching him on stage, beyond the music, beyond all the work and the nuance that he puts into it. And I was thinking, we've all seen a lot of leaders, politicians, other kind of leaders give platform speeches. And Gord to me is just like the best kind of politician, right? Like, he's got issues, he's got policy that he wants to talk about, he's got ideas, and then he puts these all into this narrative
You
that
don't
he
even
can
know the half
communicate
of it.
so
He's-
well. And then he has this charisma, which is the magic of any great leader. And I think that, to me, is what makes us so captivated by this. Like, you can't take your eyes off him.
He seemed pretty psyched that the Prime Minister was there tonight, didn't he?
What a great opportunity to again push his message.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful way to do it, to not say, hey, buddy, you better do this out. He put it out there, and he said he's going to do it.
Yeah.
So now if things don't get better up north,
Well,
then
and some people push back against that on social media, and it's kind of like, come on, this is his man. This is he gets to stand on the
But
stage
what I mean
tonight
is he
and say
did it
what
in
he
a
gets to
positive
say.
way.
Yeah,
He did it in an optimistic way, in a sort of.
It's a real issue for him. We went to Fort Albany a few years ago to check out what was really going on up in the north, and Joseph Boyden came, and Sheila Rogers from the CBC and Maclean's magazine, and he'd already been there several times and done river travels with First Nations, and it's what he's not BSing us. It's real for him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he has a number. He's a water keeper. He's into the environment. And he knows his platform, he knows his strength, and he chooses his issues wisely and personally. So.
He walks the walk.
Yeah.
No two ways about it. Hey, let's take a moment to hear from the folks at home. The reach of this live concert tonight, especially online, was absolutely massive. We were hearing from fans all over the world. People were watching on television here at home, of course. People were tuning into their radios, but they were also listening online at cbcmusic.ca. And our team asked fans to share what they've been listening to, where they've been listening, and what they've been seeing, and it's absolutely incredible. So let's take a look at just a sampling of some of the far-flung places where people have been tuning in tonight. I have something here from Rudy Hintermeister, who is originally from Elora, Ontario, who checked in from Gaborone, I think it's pronounced Gaborone, in Botswana, in Africa tonight, and he's home with his family, and he sent us a shot of him in his backyard before taking in the show on CBC Music.
Super cool.
Absolutely amazing. I saw a tweet earlier today that they were having a listening party in Turks and Caicos. We also have something here from Cheryl Hannell outside her home in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. She watched the show while wearing the T-shirt that she picked up at the Trouble in the Hen House tour 20 years ago. I'm sure she's not the only one. And Kevin Du Manoir watched the show with his wife from Florence in Italy tonight, and says that if the shirts look new, it's because they were actually lucky enough to see the band in Toronto before taking off to Italy. The show didn't even start until 2:30 a.m. their time, but they took in the whole thing, and they say, way to go, guys.
Earlier, I saw someone tweeting from Saigon in Vietnam, and I was talking to our web folks. I said, where are people watching them from? At the time I asked them, there's 120,000 people. And so we looked at the flags. They had the flags: Trinidad and Tobago, Kuwait, Laos, India, Australia, Canada, of course, the United States. I'm guessing a lot of these people are expats. but this was a concert for Canada and for Canadians around the world and others as well.
I know my friend Josh in Scarborough's watching, and my friends in Rosedale, Bruce and Jeff.
I gotta say, I texted my parents who are from the Paris of the Prairie, Saskatoon, to say, hey, what are you doing? And my parents have never heard of the Tragically Hip. And my mom said, well, we're eating. And I said, oh, I thought maybe you'd be watching the Tragically Hip concert. She said, well, of course we are. Of course we are. She doesn't even know what she's watching. Sorry, Mom, but you don't.
Yeah, no, I think it's where we're all at tonight. And we were talking earlier about the fact that in Toronto tonight, Blue Rodeo is playing a show, probably to about 6 people.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, sorry, I gave away my tickets.
Yeah, and they have their own big news that Bob's leaving, and it's
big night for Blue Rodeo too. But I tell you what, this is a night for the hip and for all of us. Pia, just to follow up on what you were just saying, what do you think it is about this band that resonates so strongly with Canadians?
I think it's a couple of things. I think 30 years. It's not like they've been around for 10, 30 years. I think, the sort of obvious things, they told stories that like most of us didn't know, frankly, and that we weren't taught in history class, or maybe we'd forgotten. And there are stories. This, for me, this kind of thing, I know everyone says so Canadian, and it is. Like, it's not about us being here in a studio or necessarily in Kingston at a concert hall. At the park by my house, there were 1,000 people. Someone sent me a picture of them on a combine, out there. It was everywhere in every small town, in every big city, up north, down south, wherever you are. And this band, that is what this band did. It has united this country. Everyone's connected to the hip, and we spent the last several months reconnecting. And what's so interesting about it, I think we've reconnected in many ways, is that first and foremost, we all know someone who has cancer, and many of us have lost people to cancer. So this isn't a kind of like, exotic disease. This affects all of us all the time. And the other thing, it's just let so many of us reconnect to our past, right? All that nostalgia and our memories. And when someone's dying, frankly, that's what you do. When someone says, hey, by the way, I got cancer, you start thinking about the times you had with them, the good ones, the bad ones, and you go down memory lane. And I think that's the gift of this band. Sarah Harmer said in an article the other day, it is our duty to celebrate this band. And I kept reminding myself of that tonight when I kind of got sad. I was like, our duty is to celebrate this band. They have given us as music fans, but also this country, a heck of a lot. And we owe them that celebration tonight.
My mom had cancer, passed away from cancer, and in her final days in the hospital, she hated it if the mood got down in the room, and she would take control of it by bringing some levity to the room, cracking some jokes, whatever she seemed to do. It seemed Gord didn't want to let it get too heavy tonight, too, with, his strutting on stage. He's walking the catwalk like a supermodel up there. He's being, silly. There's some laughs.
Yeah, it's. I went on the first show last Wednesday in Toronto with that attitude, Pia. That let's celebrate. It's not a funeral. It's a wake. Let's have a great time. That's what I know of them. Let's have a few beers.
It's also kind of weird to eulogize a guy who's still alive, but I think that what we can do is eulogize a band that is likely done. You know
what? He has a look in his eye though.
He's defiant, isn't he?
He's always got a little trick up his sleeve.
Yeah, they might still have some mischief in store. I think a big part, of course, why they resonate so strongly is that they've been telling Canadian stories going back to 1988, 1989. They've taught us our history in so many ways. But lyrics aside, because we can't forget about the rest of the incredible band, Gavin. They sounded incredible tonight. I don't think I heard a bum note all night.
No, they were great. They were great. The 3 shows in Toronto, I'm sure they were great. The entire tour.
Yeah, you can't take any member out of that band.
No. I think you were saying, Dan, earlier, it was imagine taking a lineup change in 1999. It's not the same thing. This is
and it's amazing that they managed to keep that original. I mean, how many bands can do that?
Yeah, not too many bands stick around for over the span of 3 decades with never a lineup change.
I think something that's really amazing too is, yes, they told Canadian stories, and Gord is one of the most poetic dudes around and was able to float a line that you wouldn't think would fit in a song, but otherwise it's just amazing. However, it's like an essence. It's like Kids in the Hall. It's something that is so intrinsically Canadian. And I think that throughout their career, so much time was spent talking about how they failed to transcend elsewhere. And it's only recently that we've turned that coin and said, oh, actually, can you believe how much they connected this country to each other? And, you know, it doesn't matter.
That's what I think is like, everyone's like, oh, they didn't make, not everyone, people are like, oh, they weren't big outside. I'm like, that's kind of the beauty of them, right?
Didn't we just go over people in Botswana and in Vietnam?
But the point, like when people say they didn't explode in the United States, they didn't say, and I'm like, yeah, but that's sort of the beauty of them. They're totally ours.
I remember sitting at a club in LA a few years ago, and an A&R guy from one of the big labels was going on about how his favorite band was the Tragically Hip, and he wanted to sign them, and how great they were. He's from Milwaukee, or part of Wisconsin, or just suburbs of Milwaukee, and which maybe is part of Canada.
Yeah, right.
The music has affected so many people, and people have such a personal connection to it. It's not just like, oh, that's a cool song. Like the essence of it, the spirit, the soul, what it stands for, whatever that social metaphysic is that we can't quite grasp.
It's populist and intellectual at the same time. Yeah. It's the coal miner and the philosophy prof all wrapped under
with
one.
an emotional core. It's beautiful.
It's a beautiful thing. Hey, let's see what some of the other fans around the world are saying, checking in on social media. We heard from the Demers family in their backyard, southern Ontario. They say it's a common sight, and it may look like a setup that you've had at your own home with it looks like, it's a small picture, but it looks like they were projecting the concert on a screen in their backyard. It says it's hard to beat a corn roast and a bonfire combined with a Tragically Hip show. Scott Pritchard posted an awesome shot earlier today from the water near where he was watching the show in Kawagama Lake up by Muskoka in Ontario. It's some serious skill. It looks like he and a friend are out on the lake water skiing in tandem while holding up a big sign that says that they'll be watching the Tragically Hip tonight. And so they're showing some real love for the band. And we have another one here. It says maybe you're one of those expat Canadians who took in the show at a bar, restaurant, or maybe a theater like this one, the Riviera Theater in Tonawanda, New York, near Niagara Falls. Just beautiful, absolutely beautiful theater where they were showing the concert in its entirety tonight just across the border. Dan, earlier tonight as we were watching the concert together, you told a beautiful story. You're going to have to remind me which song it was. You said you were 7 years old playing air guitar on the couch.
Oh, yeah. Well, we were talking a little bit earlier about how Wheat Kings was like one of the first songs I actually learned how to play on the
Anybody got
guitar.
a guitar? Come on, Dan.
Get a rendition. But it was Locked in the Trunk of a Car and Courage. Those were the songs. I mean, we had Road Apples, and we knew Blow It High Dough and In the House, etc. But it was fully, completely flipped my house upside down, and my brother and my sister and I just like losing our minds, air guitaring, standing on the couch, jumping off of stuff. And I mean, it blows my mind that I'm even talking about the hip at this moment on the radio with you guys as if it matters, because I just feel like they're such idols of mine. Like I watch them playing. I feel like I'm 7 years old again.
Mm-hmm. I had a moment like that making Now for Plan A, where we were doing the usual pre-production and the getting to know each other more, hangs, and the playing of the new songs. And then they had some shows that they had to play, which included the Bob Cajun movie. And I was just sitting there still with my little acoustic guitar in the room and bathhouse and bath. And then they started playing, Grace 2, Head by Century. I was like, oh, the gravity of it all. This is where I am, and I got the goosebumps, and there's a magic there. There's a special. It's I can't say. It's weird. It's amazing.
I mean, what a gift to Canada to have this weird, beautiful. Like Grace 2 is not a conventional song, and yet it's one of their biggest hits of all time.
It's one of my favorite songs of all time.
Yeah.
And
So with that in mind. And this question may be a little bit like wrestling an alligator, but let's talk about the band's legacy. What do we think that's going to be?
I think we're in it. I think we're witnessing it. It's just over 12 minutes ago. The Tragically Hip Way. They have a stamp. They have a Walk of Fame. They have a road, a street, a way, I guess is what it is. They're indelibly marked in all of our hearts. They've been a legacy, in their lifetime, which is reserved for, Guy Lafleur and, very few people.
Every once in a while you run into someone who talks about how they were there at the last waltz,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Gavin, you were just saying Grace 2 is one of your all-time favorite songs, and as we were just saying a moment before that, not exactly a conventional hit. It doesn't resemble a Katy Perry song.
I was going to say Kesha, but Katy Perry, same thing. Yeah.
But they've had giant hits. A whole bunch of their albums debuted at number one when they were released. They had several singles that went to number one in the charts here in Canada. Now, you had the chance to work with the band in the studio, as you mentioned, on the Now for Plan A album. So I'm curious to know, you're one of the few people who might be able to answer this question, but when they're in the studio, did you ever have the sense, given how unconventional their approach is, that they were trying to come up with hits in their own kind of way?
What it was that they were open for outcomes, and they had an unbelievable respect for each other, and they had an unbelievable respect for the process, and they had an unbelievable respect for me, regardless of whether it was me or not, but whoever's the sixth Beatle in this case. The demos were very interesting because there was nothing. There was nothing to. I actually called Bernie, the manager, and said, are you pulling one on me here, buddy? Because what they wanted to do was get together and live it together. It wasn't about someone, this is my song and this is my song. It's like, these are going to be our songs. And, each of them have their own personalities. Some of them want to go forward into, let's try the weirdest things we possibly can. And some of them are like, well, no, we're the hip and we should stay within at least the range of what we are, which is quite a broad range. There was a mild discussion about the word radio, and then it went, which is a very important thing in my life. I really like to have hit songs.
Yep.
But the way that people react to the songs is beyond the song. I think we were talking about this earlier as well. The Grateful Dead or something, where there's something, an identification that people have in their lifetime that transcends the actual song and this relationship. Yet when you're making the song, you can't predict that. So
I read Sarah Harmer's interview where she talked about people don't have to know the backstory in the third verse of Courage. They don't need to know that it's taken from the Hugh McLennan. They just know it feels good to sing it.
Yeah. They don't need to know what the 50 Mission Cap is, right?
It just feels good to say those words together because it's the collective consciousness of it.
Geddy Lee spoke to the CBC a few weeks ago and said that Ahead by a Century is one of his all-time favorite songs. This is a smart guy. He's a rock and roll Hall of Fame musician. He says, I have no idea what that song's about. Doesn't matter.
The lyrics to me that, no dress rehearsal, this is our life. We just saw it. It's like when he said those words, it's
I feel like I've seen that on Instagram a couple times this week. Those words.
That was a big goosebumps moment for me tonight.
And how profound that is. Thank you for that wisdom, Gord. Thank you for bringing us into our lives.
We asked hip fans tonight what they love about the band, and they responded in a big way. Unbelievable numbers, by the way, of what we saw online. It was just the number of people who were viewing here in the country and where we were hearing from people all around the world. We have let's see here, Amber Healy checked in, and she says that, like so many other Canadians who are living abroad, found that the hip to be a remedy for even the strongest homesickness. And she was checking in from Washington, D.C., I think, if I'm seeing this correctly. Kim Alexander hits the nail on the head when she says this band unites Canada in a way no other band has. Canadian band telling Canada's stories. And we've had a lot of people talking about the campfire quality of so many Tragically hip songs, uniting people from one note to the next. Chris G. took a picture at a viewing party with some of his closest friends. And let's see, I guess he doesn't say where he's checking in, but it looks like a large group of friends that got together. And I don't know if you guys saw the images out in front of, I think it was City Hall in Kingston. There were about 6,500 people inside the K-Rock Center, but it looked like there had to have been Market Square. It looked like there had to have been at least,
I think it was 20,000.
20,000 more outside there. And
the last time I was in Kingston was making a hip record, walking in Market Square, going to get poutine at the end of the night. It doesn't get more Canadian than that.
Absolutely not. So how are we feeling here? Having a good chat? We want to keep on. We could talk all night, couldn't we?
Most definitely about the hip.
Let's go around one more time, and we sort of talked about this a little bit, and I'm going to start with you, Dan, and I'm just going to state the question as simply as I can, but how will the Tragically Hip be remembered?
For me, it's like a call to arms to make music that is accessible and yet smart and intelligent and thoughtful and relevant.
You already do that.
Well, that's kind, but I feel like if Gord's not doing it, I'm not going to say that I'm in the realm of anything that can carry the flag, but I am going to say that I'm going to try. And that's, for me, as a next generation, I have many peers in that, but that's something I do not take lightly.
What do you think, Pia?
What's Tragically Hip going to mean to this country? What do they mean? I don't like talking about legacy for two reasons right now. One, because we're in a moment, and right now, and legacies take time to figure out. And maybe I'm hoping against hope, but we also don't know how this all plays out yet. But I think the hip, what it means, and again, it's such a collective thing, but it's also so individual, right? Like, if we could take a snapshot inside each one of our heads right now about, I say Tragically Hip, what's inside Dan's head and my head and Gavin's head and your head and everyone else's head, it's a different picture. And so I think it's a real individual experience with this band. And I think that's super beautiful, right? Like, there isn't just this one moment that we're all like, of course, tonight will be the snapshot that we all do collectively, but I think individually we all have our own pictures and our own memories.
Well, Pia, well done. It's true. The impact of the personal relationship that people have with the music and whatever they know of the guys, collectively and individually, is it's very powerful. It's it's a unique thing. We all you make music. You probably make music, but I've never heard it.
Play us a song.
And we have different impacts on people. I know that when I started working with the hip, everybody that I mentioned this to decided that it was a good time to tell a story. And 1997, my daughter and I were at the cottage, and regardless of the other bands I was working with, and I have the same relationship. I have a personal relationship with their music, regardless of my personal relationship with them. And it's been played out this entire Man Machine Poem Tour, and it will continue to be played out, for forever. We can all just hold on to these nuggets and listen to the songs. It's an unbelievable, like it defies words, but how it can be so publicly and connect, with the connectivity it has, but yet be so personal is mind blowing.
It's a beautiful thing over the years. I mean, going back to the end of the 80s, people have been asking Gord Downie what his lyrics mean. He's always resisted answering that question and seems to have always preferred our interpretations and what they may
it's great
mean
art, right? That's what great art does, right?
Again, thinking of the audience.
Yeah. So I want to ask you the same question. What do you think the Hip's legacy will be? I'm interested in knowing your thoughts on the band in general and on what happened tonight. Was tonight the greatest concert you've ever seen? I asked earlier if you ever felt more Canadian in your life. Let's keep the conversation going online. You can use the hashtag CBC the Hip. You can leave a comment on the CBC Music Facebook page. It'll be a place where we can continue to gather through the night and through the rest of the weekend and into the coming week and just share in what we're all thinking and feeling about the Tragically Hip right now. I want to thank you guys for coming by and hanging out, watching the show together tonight and reminiscing together and sharing our favorite.
See, when we think back to tonight, we'll remember your green sweater.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
Sweater, man.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Actually, I brought the H for the hip tonight. So again, to wrap up, we've been hanging out with Gavin Brown, producer extraordinaire, who helped out the hip with the I have every album title swirly. Now for Plan A.
Yeah.
And Pia Chattopadhyay from the CBC and generally from the world of great ideas and beautiful voices.
Thank you.
And singer-songwriter Dan Mangan, and tremendous Tragically Hip fan. Great to see you, Dan. It's been a while.
Has been a long time.
Happy to see you. Thanks for watching and listening with us, sharing your thoughts and highlights from a very special night. I don't know how the band ever made the decision to look at each other and say, all right, that's it, let's hit this last chord. I don't know how
it's
they...
very generous.
Yes,
it was a very generous thing to do for Canada.
It's unbelievable.
We're going to have a John F. Kennedy moment, aren't we?
Yeah.
Man, oh man.
Where were you?
Yeah.
Can I just say, seeing 5 grown men kiss each other on the lips
It's
backstage before a concert
Oh my gosh.
start. I mean, that for me was there were so many moments, but
The tenderness between the
Yeah.
members of the band tonight was
Yeah,
a very
and
moving thing.
hard, right? Like
Yeah.
they've been together for so long. They're friends,
Yeah.
and
And it's not just the band, it's the crew. They've had the
Crew,
same crew mostly for like 30
Yeah.
years, you know, however long they've been a band.
Billy Ray.
Amazing.
Yeah, Ricky.
So thanks to the CBC music team for pulling this whole thing together. Thanks to you at home. Thanks for joining us tonight to experience this unforgettable event. None of us will never forget it. I'm Rich Turfry. Thanks for watching CBC Music's Tragically Hip, a national celebration post-show. Bonsoir.